And welcome into another exciting edition of Locked On Eagles Squad podcast. Harry Mays, Jason Martinez, Marc Farzetta with you. So much to get into, and a quarter-century team gets introduced, and a handful of birds are on that list. And how about one word to describe your Philadelphia Eagles heading into the 2025 season? One writer from Fox Sports broke them down as reloaded. We'll get into it all and more on this edition of Locked On Eagles Squad podcast.
Fly, Eagles, fly. It's the Eagles Squad, sponsored by Gametime. Everything Philadelphia Eagles every week, covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the city of brotherly love, the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Get ready and squad up. It's the Eagles Squad show starting now.
Welcome into the show, ladies and gentlemen. This particular episode is brought to you by the wonderful people at FanDuel. That's right. New customers right now on FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Harry Mays, Jason Martinez, Marc Farzetta. Gentlemen, we have talked about this before, and when Louis DiBiase has joined us, of course, who runs the channel here, Locked On Eagles, we've talked about this. Now is the time where everyone is waiting, hoping, praying even, that nothing bad happens. Everyone's hoping, though, that there's no speeding tickets. Everybody's hoping that there's no bat phone going off for Big Dom. Everybody's hoping nobody gets in trouble, no renting of boats, no staying out too late, no trouble, no nothing. And in this time, gentlemen, our quarterback releases a children's book, quite the opposite of the worst fear of anyone. I know I'm going to be I got young kids. I'll be reading this book to them again. The title, Better Than a Touchdown. Our man, Jalen Hurts, the quarterback that I have said we have been waiting for decades, is here in Philadelphia right now, helping you get the Super Bowls, helping you win a Super Bowl, get an MVP in that Super Bowl. In the troubled time, the worried time for all head coaches, right now is the time. Jalen Hurts writes a children's book. Harry, this is our guy. This is our quarterback.
Yeah, man, you can just add author to the resume now, which is pretty impressive. But, yeah, you brought up, we got 28 days, I think, now until they have to report to camp. So
4 weeks.
4 weeks. I mean, that's going to go by in the blink of an eye. I know there's not a whole lot going on right now, but believe me, these next couple of weeks are going to fly by. And you mentioned about, you don't want to have anything bad happen, no jet skis, no wave runner accidents, everybody's, on the lake or at the shore or whatever. So yeah, this is next couple of weeks where you just pray that nothing bad happens to anybody and everybody can report and get ready to go, because we're down to, I think, 72 days until game number 1 against those Dallas Cowboys.
10 weeks and 2 days, that is, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to get that phone call where when you answer, you say, hello, and it goes, this is a collect call from the blah, blah, blah county prison. And then it goes, hey, man, accept the call. Get me out of here. You don't want that call.
Is that how they do it from prison, is collect calls
used
still
to.
in this new technology?
They used to.
Yeah, when it
back when you were in jail.
Yeah, when I was in jail, Harry.
Right. When he was doing hard time up at State College.
Right,
I was working at WISP, and
Yeah.
I answered the request line one time, and it was, you have a collect call from a Philadelphia prison inmate, and it was Steve-O from Jackass. Hey, man, accept my call. So, of course, I accepted it.
Right.
He had gotten arrested for shooting Roman candles at the stadium out of his backside.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
In typical Steve-O fashion.
Right.
I thought you meant Steve-O, like our Steve-O.
Oh, how do? No.
Yeah.
No, not that Steve.
Not Sir Steve Fredericks,
Not
the
Steven
late
Fredericks.
Yes.
Michael Wagon. Michael, do you like a Roman candle? All the callers hung up during the break.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Out of your bum. Why would you do that? All right. So I just find it interesting that in the troubled time, Jalen Hurts is the one that's like, hey, now would be a great time to release a children's book. So we don't got to worry about our guy. Right. Now, there's more pressing issues, of course, than Jalen Hurts writing a children's book, and we'll jump into them. Like, for instance, ESPN, for one, released the quarter-century team. We got a number of Eagles on that. We'll talk about that.
Are we
and then how about this?
Quarter century already?
I know. Believe me.
I thought we were going to party like it's 1999 still.
Yeah, that was 26 years ago.
Oh,
Y2K, man. I got news for you. Y2K, we survived.
We did.
We made it. We're here for the beautiful digital age, my friend.
Century.
The
roaring.
but how about this? I think this is a good bit. I like this bit. Ben Arthur of Fox Sports gave a word to every NFL team to best describe how they're heading into the 2025 season. And I love this word for the Philadelphia Eagles. I find this word to be a comforting word, and you guys can call me crazy or not. Reloaded. And he really focuses a lot on the defense. We'll get into a little bit more later, but reloaded is the word for the Philadelphia Eagles. And the reason I find this so comforting is because I've looked at the defensive side of the ball more than anything. I mean, the Eagles offense, it is what it is. I mean, you're reloading at one position. That's the right guard spot. Everything else looks pretty damn good.
Right.
But when it comes to the defense, look, I wouldn't say I'm overly concerned. I still think Jahad Campbell can play. I think Nolan Smith's going to take that step forward and come back off the injury well. And the defensive line, I have concerns because who's going to be dominant? Who's going to be in the Milton Williams role next to Jalen Carter? I mean, this is a long list of things we've already talked about. Safety position, the other outside corner. So there's concern there. But the word reloaded to me, Jason, feels like, hey, look, it's the same weapon. You just got different ammunition. That's it. It's going to be firing the same. It's going to be. So the word reloaded is just like that to me signifies the Eagles kind of running it back.
To me, they dropped the empty magazine out of the gun, and they loaded a full magazine into it again.
A full clip.
Another clip, and they're going to go into war with a full clip again. It's not reloaded in the sense they lost a bunch and they restacked or whatever.
Yeah.
They're ready to go again. They've got all the weapons in the world. They've got the ammunition. Can they kind of mow down the competition like they did last year with this reloaded magazine and get after it? I like that, a clip.
Yeah. You open up, empty the clip, they say.
And
they emptied it and won the Super Bowl. Now they just reloaded it. I like that too. I think it's a good word.
Yeah, absolutely. Because let's talk about this. So, rebuild. Nobody likes that. All right.
That's what
retool.
Now who's rebuilding though? Like, are the Giants in? They're still in a rebuild, right?
So in you're gonna hate this word with the Giants. All right, let's just get into it because we're in it. All right. The New York Giants, Philadelphia Eagles reloaded. The New York Giants. This guy Ben Arthur of Fox Sports. Giants word. Fascination.
No, pathetic is the word.
Well, I don't understand
By that you mean pathetic.
I don't understand that.
I guess.
Where's the fascination?
I'm fascinated with Russell Wilson.
What?
I'm fascinated with Jackson Dart. Right? What? Like, huh? What's happening?
I am not fascinated with the New York Giants.
Neither am I. I think it's just that they have a New York market. This is a website essentially writing an article and fascination.
Wow. Now, they have a nice defense coming together do the Giants. And I am intrigued by Jackson Dart. I will admit that. But yeah, fascination. We saw, Russell Wilson is basically like washed, as the kids say. He's got really next to nothing left. And isn't Jameis Winston in that quarterback room too?
Yes, he is.
Right now, at least as
he'll have that job.
I'm intrigued by Jackson Dart. The Daboll is, dead man walking if this team doesn't start out, and they've got a tough schedule for the first 5 or 6 weeks, if I remember. If they don't start out, somewhere around 500 or better in the first 6 or 8 games, he could be gone. I mean, he's been a disaster. I think he has 18 wins through his tenure with the Giants, which is awful. So fascination that's a strange one. I will admit that.
Their first 6 games, by the way, at Washington, at Dallas, Kansas City, at home, Chargers, New Orleans, Eagles.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, New Orleans is the easiest game out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is not an easy start.
All right, well, here's the Cowboys one. And look, this isn't – I mean, it's somewhat – wait, what was yours?
Annoying.
Annoying? Yeah.
I thought you meant Cowboy fans.
Fraud, yeah. That's another list. The subscribed fan bases. I got news. Unfortunately, ours wasn't great either. But when it comes to the Cowboys, the word was rebound. Rebound. That was the word to describe the Dallas Cowboys. Again, Eagles reloaded. Sounds dangerous. Mm-hmm. The Giants, fascination. The Cowboys, rebound. when you look at an injured quarterback like Dak Prescott, I think a lot of people could jump to that word. So let me just remove the star from the situation. Let me remove the cowboy logo and all that stuff from the situation. Just say a team didn't have their franchise quarterback and now he's back. Okay, fine. Rebound is the word they're looking for. There. I could understand that at least. The fascination with the Giants makes no sense. No, also don't get me wrong. I don't think the Cowboys rebound. I think this is the Commanders and the Eagles division, and mostly the Eagles division. But I could at least see that word being applied to a team that didn't have their quarterback last year.
Well, isn't it interesting when I think of rebound outside of basketball, I think of like that rebound relationship. You were in a long relationship.
Yes.
It broke off for whatever reasons, and then you're sort of desperate to be with somebody again, and that's the rebound relationship that very rarely has a chance of ever becoming, something long lasting. It's just you're so desperate to be around, to be with somebody, and that's interesting. If I look at it in that scope with Dallas, they are desperate. Because they've got a new coach, Brian Schottenheimer, who what I'm reading is, coming off a lot better than I anticipated. He's coming off very competent, and they like the staff that he's put together. So then maybe they might be a little bit better in the coaching aspect than I thought. But, this is a big year for Dak Prescott. He's got Pickens now as one of his wideouts along with C.D. Lamb. They got a new running back in there. The guy from Williams from the Denver Broncos who played at Carolina, was a good college player, decent with Denver. So they're going to have a lot of newness. They got that new guard that they drafted from Alabama to add to that offensive line. It's an interesting year for Dallas. But I think they're going to probably be better than I thought they would be, but that only means maybe around nine wins, maybe a 9-8 Dallas Cowboys. Is that rebound? I don't know.
That's a small rebound. It's not a big rebound in a big moment. I think it's a good word for them. 2 years ago, they won 12 games, won the division.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they won 7 games and finished third in the NFC East. So the rebound is applicable because they had the good year, won the division. Obviously, the injuries last year affected them. To me, it's a rebound, but with a question mark after it. What's the enunciation at the end? Is there a question mark, or is it just rebound? It's a question mark rebound for me. Can they rebound?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
A lot of question marks, though.
Yeah, certainly. Now, the one thing that I do find interesting is that if you just flip ahead to the Commanders, I question this as well, but upside is the word to that. Look, it is a weird word because I think you saw a lot of what was supposed to be the upside last year. So if there's an upside to the upside, they're basically in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
they're winning the conference championship. They're beating the Eagles, and they're going to the Super Bowl. I don't see them as that good. But if you're talking about upside, I think every Commanders fan, and this is the first time we've said this in a long time going into a season, every Commanders fan, I think, has reason to be pretty optimistic about their upcoming year, considering what you got out of a rookie quarterback last year in Jane Daniels. So for me, I think this is a very interesting situation for the Commanders. It's certainly optimistic. That would be a word I would throw out.
Yeah.
Upside, when you draft a rookie, you go, this guy's got tremendous upside.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
but there's a question.
Yeah, it's
can he achieve it? Right?
Do it again. Do it repeatable, doable.
Trending.
Trending.
That would have been
trending.
A good one.
That's a decent one, I think.
If you feel really good about him, legit would have been a good word.
That's
that they're a legit team because of what they did last year. But maybe that's a bit of a question mark too, because there's been a lot of quarterbacks come in, get off to a good start in their career.
Yeah. And
then they have to adjust because the league's got a lot of film on them now.
Yeah. Now they've done some big things to bolster that offensive line. Yeah. They're obviously doing the right things. It depends on whether they selected the right guys. But the idea of building an offensive line to protect that kid is really, the right way to go about it. Can he back up the tremendous year he had as a rookie? Can he, continue in an upward trajectory? I mean, that was an unbelievable rookie year. It really was. Because when you think about it, he didn't really have a whole lot to work with. You would think about, the wideouts, they weren't great.
No.
He made a lot out of nothing
by himself.
Yeah, he really did.
Think about the Hail Marys and everything. He's spectacular.
Yeah. They did have a lot of luck that went their way too. Some very good fortune.
Yeah, and you wonder, does that happen twice? Is it 2 years in a row?
Well, lucky is what? Lucky is once. You do it again. That's a trend. The trending is a good word. I think you mentioned earlier there, Jason. I think that describes them rather well. It also describes the offseason that they've had. But look, I as I said earlier, this is going to come down to the Eagles and the Commanders. The one thing that I do caution people with, if you are a Commanders fan, so this is obviously good for the Eagles, even though it reflects a kind of a bad point for the Eagles, is can Jaden Daniels do it again?
Right.
Like, is it just 1 year? Now the league knows him. Now Vic Fangio's been watching film on him.
Right.
2 games you can watch on him just against his own defense from last year. How does he respond? It's the same thing that we were talking about our last show about the Eagles. It's like, what's the adjustment they make to the adjustment? It's the same thing that Jalen Hurts was asked about, Kevin Patullo was asked about, Nick Sirianni was asked about. It's like, all right, you put your cards out on the table last year. You went all in, went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl, had this fantastic year, 10 wins in a row, all that. But now everyone knows what to do, and they saw what the Chiefs did in the Super Bowl to really contain Saquon Barkley. And yes, Jalen Hurts obviously proved he could throw the football in those situations, but what are you going to do to make sure that when teams do load the box and they just sell out to stop Saquon Barkley, what do you do? What's the adjustment you make? What is the passing game really going to step up as much as we've all called for it to step up? How much do you change from last year by keeping the same identity? How do you not get a complete, facelift and still keep some of the main features? You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I think that's what the Eagles are looking at going into this season.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Eagles, it's going to be very interesting to see how it starts out, and because the Eagles, they're no secret. What they have, they're great up front. The offensive line's great. Hurts is a guy that is willing and doesn't need the spotlight on him, the numbers and the accolades. But there's going to be situations, I think, more so this year where he's going to have to be that absolute guy that puts the team on his back and is the catalyst to a win. And obviously with the wide receivers as well. Saquon's going to have those games just because he's Saquon, and he can just blow plays open, a 65-yard run at the drop. It can happen at any time, very Barry Sanders-like. So he's going to have those moments as well. But it's going to come back, I think, more to Jalen Hurts this year. And that doesn't cause me any pause at all. I know that's the narrative. This whole thing with criticizing Jalen Hurts and, tamping down his accomplishments and all that has gotten so old hat at this point because it's so obvious in its intent. From the national media, its intent is to rile up the Eagles fans, our fan base here, because we react to it all the time, and that gets them clicks and an easy talking point. It's a layup. It's a low-hanging fruit. And even in this town now, it's been exploited for engagement, which is kind of sad because I thought we were a more educated fan base than that. And I think the fan base is, but I think there's some people on the radio using this for engagement farming. And, we should be beyond that at this point. That's clown show stuff. Yeah. And I know Joe. The camera. I think it's clown show stuff.
I'm glad I wasn't doing radio when the term engagement farming existed. Because, I mean, that's
the day radio died, when engagement farming became a metric.
Yes. Yeah, jeez.
Metrics.
I've said for a look, I think you're kidding yourself that all of a sudden, like, clickbait exists. It's just called something different. Tabloid headlines in the 1800s had stuff just to make sure you bought that tabloid. The newspaper headlines. It's all just about attention. It's always been about attention because that obviously drives dollars in any capacity. However, the minute the attention became more important than facts is the day I think we got into a lot of trouble. Yeah. And what really bothers me is saying a guy that has won a Super Bowl, got the MVP in the Super Bowl, absolutely balled out, and above it all, let's just say Josh Sweat had 2 more sacks in the Super Bowl and he was a Super Bowl MVP. Jalen Hurts still balled out in that Super Bowl. He answered the question that everybody, or I shouldn't say everybody, I should say every one of his haters, naysayers, non-believers had, which was, if it comes down to it where he's got to throw, can they do it?
Right.
Oh, yeah, here's a Super Bowl victory, thanks in large part to Jalen Hurts' performance when they did stop Saquon Barkley. So there's, for me,
and against Patrick Mahomes, too. There's a one-on-one competition there, too.
It matters who you beat. It really. I know you can't set up the game that you want to say, I'd really love to beat this team because it'll add to my, my reputation. But they ended up facing the best team. I mean, a juggernaut football
the last
team.
decade too.
Yeah, absolutely, a dynasty.
Yeah, and
if they barely real quick, if they
tackle another, but
of course.
they're having an internal it's like a goalie in hockey. He has nothing to do with the goalie at the other end, but you're going against that goalie.
Oh, sure.
It's just it's the proxy of the position. So
if you know Marty Brodeur. If you know Marty Brodeur's on the other end or Patrick Waugh, you got to be on top of your game. So there is an effect there.
Yeah.
You like how I knew hockey goalies' names, Jason? Did you like that?
You went for some pretty popular ones.
They're from the 90s.
Playing, they're hot right now. No, they're still in my mind. They're still playing. They're still looking great.
Harry would have given me a Achievers or at least a Belfour.
Oh, very nice.
Oh, Eddie B.
Belfour.
Eddie Eagle.
Yes.
He liked his booze.
Probably still does.
He
could have reloaded. He's probably getting reloaded now. Sounds like a state college weekend for a Penn State football game.
Reloaded. Yeah, there you go.
I will say with Jalen, if he barely beat the Bills or even barely beat the Chiefs, and he had like 3 interceptions, then it would be a little bit easier to go. You can't. Is he really? How lucky was he? The defense was great. He balled out in that suit. Like the questions have been answered. Yeah. Everything else is just attention. Yeah, exactly. So
the thing is, Mark, is that whole kind of engagement farming, clickbait, whatever, it's all disingenuous. And you don't buy it for a minute because the same people that say these things at another time, you can go back and listen or find where they're lauding. They have no problem jumping on either side of the fence depending on the day.
Yeah.
They flip-flop like a fish on a dock.
And that goes for the national guys, too, that talk about
time.
the Eagles. It's not just local guys, trying to get phones.
I mean, Coward's been...
Oh, totally. He doesn't even take phone calls.
Yeah. Let's go to the phones.
All right. Hey, there's some great news surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles. And how about this? All quarter century. Yeah, that was a fast 25 years, I know, for a lot of us. When we come back, we're going to break that down. Some Eagles names on that list, I should say. And also,
our Eagles all quarter century team, too.
What?
We could definitely do that.
Just Eagles quarter century team.
Oh, okay.
Maybe we do that Thursday.
Crank that out. Yeah.
Look at you. Well,
we do have
topics.
Somebody's got to produce the program.
Wow. Oh.
Oh, snap.
Oh.
Snap. We're not spoiled.
I think I did that with
Mikey
Miss one time.
Oh boy.
Produce the program.
Oh boy. We don't have the benefit of someone behind the glass. We're all front and center. Right. But when we do come back, we're going to talk about those all quarter century Eagles after this is Locked On Eagle Squad podcast. And how about FanDuel? If you guys take advantage of all that FanDuel has to offer right now, summer sports in full swing, whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, and high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get into the game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. How about that? Don't forget your sunscreen. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and also the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast payout, and it makes the regular season games feel even more exciting. Any event elevated with FanDuel. So whether you're placing the same game parlay or watching a bet right to the ninth inning, FanDuel is the way to go. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets when your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. See that hair? They're thinking of you. They're thinking of
golf on the green.
Got you going?
Yeah. How about that?
Lights, golf on the green. We're ready to party as far as FanDuel is concerned. Gentlemen, this should come really as no surprise. The only surprising name on here for the Philadelphia Eagles, this is an all quarter century list put together by ESPN. Names on the list that I do not at all find surprising. Jason Kelce, Brian Dawkins, Terrell Owens, Lane Johnson, although I acknowledge as very much worthy of being a quarter century right tackle, often has not gotten the respect, i.e. Penei Sewell as a all-pro and not Lane Johnson. That rubs me the wrong way. But he gets the credit, Lane Johnson, for the last 25 years being the best right tackle in football. When you look at these names, Aaron, I know you looked at all these. When you look at these names, I mean, those are 4 names from your Philadelphia Eagles that I think do make a lot of sense. The only name a little surprising, Lane Johnson, being that he has gotten disrespected more often than not by national people.
Yeah, well, I absolutely think Lane Johnson belongs. And John Runyon wasn't too bad either, by the way, during his time here with the Eagles. But, yeah, Trey Thomas as well. But Jordan Mailata in there over Jason Peters, to me, is a travesty. And I love Jordan Mailata. He's on his way to hopefully a 15-year career and will be one of these guys. But have we forgotten about Jason Peters? He belongs in the Hall of Fame. Hopefully someday he gets there. This was a guy who was a tight end with the Buffalo Bills out of the University of Arkansas. And Andy Reid saw his skill set and said, I want this guy. I'm going to make him a left tackle. He ends up being one of the best left tackles during his time period. Is he still playing? I know he was like latching on to. Oh, he did, because he was latching on to teams for 1 year and stuff.
Seattle. I think he went to Seattle for 1 year, retired, and he became either their offensive line coach or their assistant offensive line coach. Yeah. Okay.
And sometimes when you last a little bit too long, and but who am I to say if a team's willing to give you a couple $1,000,000, you go play it if you can, physically do it. I don't begrudge any guys for, taking a check if it's offered. But sometimes when you stick around a little too long and people forget about how good you were, how great you were in your prime. And that guy was unfreaking believable. He's a Hall of Famer in my view.
The bodyguard. Absolutely.
Yeah. He's absolutely going to be in the Hall of Fame. He comes in and takes over for the aforementioned Trey Thomas in 2009. You go from Trey Thomas right to Jason Peters. And one thing Andy Reid knew, you got to protect your quarterback and the blind side. That left tackle, so important.
Right.
I mean, the left tackles for the Eagles in the quarter century are Trey Thomas to Jason Peters. And you had a couple of years there where you had Vitae kind of coming in because Peters was hurting in and out a little bit. But then you go from Jason Peters to Jordan Mailata, who's become a stud. But you're right. The recency bias is real.
A little bit here, right?
But I mean, I don't forget how good that guy was. He was an absolute animal. You knew you were in a great spot with that guy on the left side. He was tremendous. I think he should have been the quarter century guy there.
One thing that I remember about Jason Peters is actually his absence. And what I mean by that is you go into the locker room, when he was here, and, Jason Kelce would be there, Lane Johnson would be there, all these other guys would be there. And you rarely ever saw Jason Peters at his locker, just answering questions, and nobody said a damn thing about it. It was like, no. He talks when he wants to talk, if he ever feels like talking. And if he feels like talking, it's going to be a quick hit at his locker, and that's that. He was never a guy that was just hanging out there. A lot of guys go in that, they just hang out. Maybe some guys are hoping they get some questions their way. They get a little love, they get a little attention. More often than not, Jason Peters not in that room. I always thought it was a very, I don't know, cryptic is too negative, but very there was a mystique, an aura about him where he just he did a lot of times he did his own thing and everybody understood it because no matter what, he was going to be out there on the football field on Sunday dominating. Right. That was the way it was going to go down. So, and you listen to Lane Johnson talk about him, and it's like he talks about his godfather or something. Like the amount of Jason Kelce the same way. The amount of respect they had for Jason Peters is off the charts compared to just about any other lineman I've ever come across. And that includes Jason Kelce because he had the respect for Jason Peters as well. And you're right, Harry, you talk about the background. He's with Buffalo. I remember Ross Tucker telling the story about Ross Tucker being a tackle. And in Buffalo, actually, it went down where he was undrafted. He was a tight end, and they saw him blocking. And they went, hey, you know what? Let's see what he could do maybe as a tackle and see what he does in that regard. And he just started beating guys. And Ross Tucker tells the story about they just asked Jason Peters to go from this spot to this spot, and he was better in 20 seconds than something I had been doing my whole life. Like, that's how you just knew that he was going to the next level. And he certainly ascended under Andy Reid here in Philadelphia. Certainly later with Jeff Stoutland here in Philadelphia. They just went a whole other level with Jason Peters here. So I look at that and look at the same thing with Jordan Mailata and now what he's able to do. They get these athletic guys, these big athletic guys, and they asked them to do, in a lot of instances, something very similar to what Howard Mudd asked offensive linemen to do in terms of being versatile. Like Howard Mudd wanted guys like Jason Kelsey that were smaller guys, the undersized variety that could get out and block on a screen, could run, could do all that. And now Jack Stoutland has these guys very similar to that, where the nimbleness is still there, but these guys are these guys have the size. The phrase that gets uttered a lot by Juan Castillo's guys like Todd Harriman's or Trey Thomas are the phrase is mass moves ass. Okay, mass moves. I
like that.
Yeah.
Let me give you some numbers.
Real quick. Let me finish that. Stoutland asked these guys to be those same types of players, mass moves ass, but also you better be quick. And if Stoutland calls it, you better have that lower body lateral movement. And that's what these guys have.
Technique. Trey used to do the technique in the studio. Show us the one step in the punch to get the guy off balance. Let me give you some stats on Lane Johnson.
We love our stats.
No, Googling him is fascinating because they bring him up on broadcast from time to time. You know how many sacks he's given up in his career? He's been in the league since 2013. Only 20. 10 of them came in his rookie season. That's insane. He has an NFL record for going the longest 26 consecutive games without giving up a sack. And the Eagles' record with Lane Johnson versus without him, 79-47 with him. Without him, they are 15-22.
Yeah. I think that's where the bells and whistles go off with the national media. When they find out that stat, that when he's not in the game, what it does to the rest of the team
and it's a right
at
tackle.
That position of right tackle, it's like, whoa, this guy's good, man.
Because that's a big sample size.
It is.
You can make stats in small sample size say anything.
Yeah.
You're talking about since 2013.
Yeah.
And the fact he's getting up 20 sacks, 10 of them in his rookie year, and only 10 since 2014 that's 10 seasons.
Yeah.
That's giving up a sack a year at a right tackle. That's disgusting.
I think, am I correct in thinking that Trey Thomas was a first-round pick?
Trey out of Florida?
He was.
Florida State.
He was Florida State. 19th, maybe?
Okay.
I don't want to shortchange my guy.
I'm just thinking, there you have it where, okay, that's the way it's supposed to go. You draft a left tackle in the first round and he becomes an all-timer. He's there for 10, 12 years and does a tremendous job and is one of your best players.
11th.
Then you get 11th pick. Okay. But then you get a guy who was undrafted at a different position playing for a different team. You bring him in here and create a Hall of Famer. And then you go find a guy who wasn't even playing the sport and was living the other side of the planet, okay, in the different hemisphere and playing a totally different sport, and you get him and create a future all-timer. Think about that. I mean, that just does not happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
notice the transferable skills, right?
Wow. Yeah, I remember Trey telling me a story. He got drafted. And they're like, all right, we're going to need you to come up here and, meet everybody. He's like, you're going to have to give me a day. You're going to have to give me a day. I'm not ready for that because he was partying. he had a party. He was like, I'm getting drafted in the first round. What am I, not going to have a party? We're sending the car to take you to the airport tomorrow. He's like, no, that's not going to happen. I need another day.
I love that. I can hear him saying that too. Just the way
absolutely.
You're doing it. Yeah.
Who was the GM? That's Ray Rhodes was the coach then before Andy.
In 98,
yeah.
Ray Rhodes would have been here. And then the GM.
Was it, what's his name?
I'm blanking.
The older fella.
Not Donahoe, was it? No.
Tom Donahoe?
No, that's wrong.
I don't remember. I'm going to look it up because now it's going to bother me.
Yeah,
I'll have to look it up as well. Real quick, a couple other names on here. Are we surprised Brian Dawkins was on the list?
Oh, it was Tom Modrak.
Oh, Modrak.
Thank you.
Yeah. No, I'm not surprised that Dawkins is on there. I mean, and he played in an era with some other terrific safeties. I mean, Polamalu, Ed Reed, those guys are on. It's like to be mentioned third or fourth in that group is no shame on you. You know what I mean? Like that's as good as it gets.
Yeah, it's a great class. And then look, I still think this guy's the greatest wide receiver I've ever played or I've ever seen put on an Eagles jersey. And I love AJ Brown, but Terrell Owens was just dominant, a force at the time. He retired. I think he still even might be there. third most receiving touchdowns of all time behind Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. That's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
That's pretty good.
And he was only here for you think about it, a blink of an eye. I mean, he wasn't here that long.
A year and a half.
Think of the impact that he made in that short period of time.
How many games did he even play? More than 16 games. He was here into the next year, but
I mean, he had a career before that with the Niners. You can make that a career right there, and then after the Eagles with the Cowboys too.
21 total games.
Yeah. 21 total games, and we talk about him the way we talk about him. That's impact.
He was 32 when they got him. He was 32 when they acquired him. And the funny thing about that is, I don't know, I forget how many games did he even play 9 or 10 games the following year? The second year, the year he got thrown out of training camp?
7.
He played 7 games.
7 games. Okay. Wow.
Sent him home.
In those 7 games, gentlemen, he led the Eagles for the year in receiving numbers.
763 yards.
He led the Eagles both years he was here, and both years were cut short, obviously. So that's what I take away from T.O. So although not just for his Eagles numbers, being the all quarter century team, I think that's also rather fitting for him as well.
Now, can you quickly, before we move on, go through the running backs that are on this list? Because I had an issue with somebody not being mentioned.
I just closed it out, but let me see if I can bring this back up.
I think Priest Holmes, was Priest Holmes the first guy on the list? Or am I confusing that with the PFF list? Because they had a list PFF. Too. Okay, they had a list too. If you could pull it up again and give me the running backs. Because there was a glaring omission, if I remember.
Okay. Hold on. Coming back. I mean,
Adrian Peterson's got to be on the list, right?
That he was not on the list.
Really?
Yes. That's what jumped out at me. No Adrian Peterson? Are you kidding me?
You got to have AP on there.
All right. Now I feel like the list is null and void if AP is not on that list.
Well, LaDainian Tomlinson's got to be on there, no?
I'm not sure if he was on it either.
All right. Now it's redirecting me somewhere. Okay.
What about Frank Gore? He was almost an Eagle.
No, he's not on the list.
He had the most rushing yards of anybody since 2000, I believe.
No. Yeah, he was his career. He never wanted to quit, that guy.
Yeah.
I would imagine. I hope that guy does not suffer later in his life from all the trauma that he put his body through. But that guy, I mean, he put himself through the ringer.
What about a guy like Marshawn Lynch? Would he made the list?
I don't think so.
See, some of these guys, their windows were really small. They were really good, but really small. Edgerrin James was around a long time with the Colts. Fred Taylor was a real good running back.
Real good.
Yeah. I mean, Tiki, pretty good too. Zeke. Trying to think of guys in the division.
All right. Running backs. Yeah. Priest Holmes was on the list.
Okay, that's where I got. Now,
okay.
Really? Come on. All century.
Christian McCaffrey. Holmes? Derrick Henry.
Recency bias with McCaffrey, too, I think.
Fullbacks. Oh, my goodness. We have fullbacks on here, too? That's adorable.
Yeah, Juszczyk, I think, is the only guy they put on there.
Kyle Juszczyk is the only one.
Yeah.
All right, so Derrick Henry, running back room, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Priest Holmes. I mean, he was like the number one pick in everybody's fantasy drafts those years with the Chiefs.
I mean, did we forget that Adrian Peterson played football? Are you serious?
Apparently.
Yeah. That's incredible because he's the second leading rusher of the 21st century.
Yeah. I mean, come on, man.
I mean, he was tremendous. He just got in a fight last week, too, so his name's in the I don't know if you saw that in a poker game. He can't fight real well. That dude was like an average Joe and kind of tossed him a little bit.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Pointed at him.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was a poker game, and they got in a fight, and it was like cell phone footage of it. I watched it. Yeah. I will tell you one thing you do not want to do with Adrian Peterson. Shake his hand.
Oh, he
is the worst. And he knows he's hurting you, and he's crippling you, and like he goes to shake your hand, you just say no. Just, I'll sit this one out.
Where did you do that? At the Maxwell Club?
At the Maxwell.
Or something?
He came and sat in with me and Mikey Miss.
Okay.
And he shook my hand and nearly put me on the ground.
Well, did he shake Mikey Miss's hand and put him on the ground?
I hope so. But I was warned about it before.
Okay.
Somebody told me, like, be careful shaking his hand.
Wow.
And he just, I mean, first of all, his mitts are to the size of like King Kong. And he just, woof, and you're like, oh.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
So how you doing?
That makes that list somewhat suspect
That's
to me.
bad.
If you're going to omit that guy. The other list was the PFF did a list, and they loved Lane Johnson, obviously. But they had Nick Mangold over Jason Kelce at center.
Really?
Now, Mangold was terrific, and he toiled away on some moribund New York Jets teams. He was also on some couple of good Jets teams, too. But maybe it's a little New York bias. I don't know. I'm biased towards Kelce, but Mangold was terrific.
Yeah, that reeks of New York bias to me.
Yeah.
And he was the center for the back-to-back AFC champion teams. That made it to AFC champion.
With Marc Sanchez. Yeah.
With the Sanchez himself.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely. I can't get Derrick Henry at running back. I like Christian McCaffrey, I guess, but Priest, AP,
McCaffrey's hurt too much.
Exactly. Adrian Peterson.
Sean Alexander, remember with the Seahawks how dominant he was? But
that was a brief career,
window.
though, too. He had a brief time.
Look, Frank Gore is the leading rusher since 2000.
Yeah.
16,000 yards.
Yeah.
He's around forever.
Yeah, somebody will call him a stat compiler, like they'd call a baseball player, a left-handed pitcher.
Right. He's
a stat compiler.
For longer than anybody else. That's why.
I know. It is amazing.
Hold on. You know what is wild, though? How would you like to have a quarter-century team and both your tight ends are on it? And that's what the Kansas City Chiefs have with Tony Gonzalez. And Travis Kelce.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's pretty stacked. And that's on ESPN's list, by the way.
Yeah.
Kittle in that mix, maybe.
Gonzalez was terrific.
Yeah, he was before his time too. The way.
Oh yeah, he played basketball. I remember watching him in the NCAA tournament in the '90s for the Cal Bears.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of revolutionized the position and paved the way for guys like Travis Kelce.
Yep.
And those guys that were big enough and could block like a tight end, but run like a receiver.
Yeah. That was the first guy. And because of his basketball background, that's the first time I heard the term box out. Like he really boxed, he got the end. You're just boxing out. That's all you're doing. On his route. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's good stuff.
That is a great list. I will, except for the running backs. All right. When we come back, we're going to continue our series of the 2024 Season Rewind with the Philadelphia Eagles. We got Week 17, Week 18 to focus on. Week 17 was against Dallas and South Philly, and then they hosted the Giants the following week to wrap up the regular season. We'll break that all down and more after we return from this quick blink of a break, gentlemen, right after this. So let's get into it. Your Philadelphia Eagles having a great season. They just come off a loss, though, against the Washington Commanders. That was the game that Kenny Pickett was in, or came in for Jalen Hurts, and had to start, unfortunately. And that was he came in after Jalen Hurts got hurt in the previous week. No, sorry, I'm getting this confused. They come in the game against Washington. Kenny Pickett enters into that game. It ends with the drop of Devontae Smith. They take the loss against Washington, snapping their 10-game losing streak. So now the Eagles, without Jalen Hurts under center, have to go in and take on the Dallas Cowboys in South Philadelphia. Kenny Pickett under center for that game in South Philly. It ended up being a 41-7 blowout. Saquon Barkley, 167 yards on the ground, and the Eagles keep rolling, get right back on track. Jason, when you think back to this game, what jumps out to you?
Well, I look at both of the Dallas games, and the Eagles outscored them 77-13, which is insane. They beat the brakes off them earlier in the season, and they beat the brakes off them and rebounded in this game, again, without Hurts. And, it was one of those games where it was just so dominant. It was men versus boys. Yeah. And the Eagles, they only threw the ball 15 times in the game. I mean,
19, actually.
19 times. The two, yeah. Between the two quarters. It was incredible. And it was like, okay, don't worry. We're going to get Hurts back, presumably for the playoffs. We can survive here to preserve home field, which was important, obviously. These were important games for the Eagles, even though they knew they were going to the playoffs. But there was this battle between the Eagles and Minnesota, and who else was a part of that? There was
Detroit.
Detroit was a part of that to get home field event, and Detroit was playing Minnesota in the Week 17, so there was all these variables. But they got it done, and they beat the heck out of the Cowboys. I don't like when the Cowboy games are that late in the year because invariably one team's not playing for anything.
Yeah,
I think you should play them, both of the games against the teams in your division before Week 14.
Well, they're playing him week 1 this year.
Yeah. Remember the one year they had him like week. It was when they were 16. They had him
It was like 16 and 18 or something, right? Yeah,
They played him twice, and then they ended up playing him in the playoffs in the first round. So they
Yeah.
played him 3 of the last 4 games. It was crazy.
Yeah, I had written that down too, Jason. It's great that you came up with that too. It's 75-13 between the 2 games against the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, it's just, and you sit here and say, well, Dak Prescott didn't play. Well, the Eagles starter didn't play in the second game either. I mean, it was like it wasn't the way you'd really want it to be, but what dominance, over your rival at least. And C.J. Gardner-Johnson started it off with a 69-yard pick 6 of Cooper Rush, and Pickett was in there, and then he got hurt. He got busted up on a tackle. I think it was Micah Parsons hit him and knocked him out of the game. And then you're bringing in Tanner McKee, but between the 2 of them, they combined for 4 touchdowns, 3 through the air and 1 on the ground. And like you said, Jason, 13 of 19, pretty efficient passing for just under 200 yards from your second and third string quarterbacks. And no turnovers. They won. They turned Dallas over 4 times and won the turnover battle +4. So that's really good work out of your backup players with a lot of backup linemen. You didn't have much of a running game. Saquon was out, or actually no, Saquon did have 167 yards. It was the next game where they rested all the offensive linemen.
To not go for the record.
But this was the game where he topped the 2,000-yard mark with 167 yards with backup quarterbacks. So everybody's sitting there saying, we got to stop Saquon. No, not so much. He runs for 167 yards. So, it was just pure dominance. This, I think, was the game where they clinched the division because this is where Sirianni was wearing the cap in the post game, the division champs and whatnot. So it was really, a good game for the fans at home, even though it was backups playing maybe some key spots for Dallas and you didn't have your quarterback. It's always good to beat down the Dallas Cowboys. I don't care what the circumstances are. I don't really care what the depth chart says. It's a great thing.
CJ had 2 picks in the game overall. The first one that you mentioned, 69 yards. And I remember later in the game, I want to say it was towards the end of the first half, Nolan Smith had a ball in his hands for an interception that he dropped. And then it went to, I think, later in that possession, if it wasn't the same, I can't remember if it was a tip or if it was later in a similar play, CJ came down with another one. So it was like the Eagles, they were just destined to force those turnovers in that game. It was the feeling of, everything is going to go right after that moment for the Eagles, and that's exactly what it did, and another blowout victory for them. And then the other thing is, you did go into this game with the Kenny Pickett versus Cooper Rush Bowl, essentially, is the way this went into. And it was just a matter of whether or not Saquon Barkley can continue to do his thing, which is exactly what it was. And I think there was also a feeling, as you mentioned, Jason, you're looking around the NFC, and you really had to keep pace with these teams that were just on fire as much as the Eagles were on fire. And people looking at the Lions, like they were really the class of the NFC. The Eagles had to keep track of that, or they had to keep pace with that. And they were able to do that throughout the entire time. They had that little hiccup, obviously, when Jalen Hurts went down against the Commanders, and they took that loss. But even that loss really could have easily been a win. And they just needed to make statement games after that. And that's exactly what they did. A statement win over they did exactly what they were supposed to do against the Dallas Cowboys team that had Cooper Rush playing.
Right.
Yeah, and again, you did it with your backup and your third-string quarterback. And the thing is that was a shot to those teams. He's out right now, but it don't matter. We're still going to pile up wins, and they did exactly that. Wasn't that game also flexed out of prime time to 1 o'clock?
Right.
It was a 1 o'clock game.
Yeah,
I think it was flexed out because of all the injuries.
Yeah.
With
and you and I doing the postcast were very appreciative of that, if I recall.
Harry. It's exactly why I remembered it.
Exactly right. Well, you talk about Pickett versus Rush in a bowl. I mean, that's like Pitt against Central Michigan in the Motor City Bowl.
Yeah, and not the 70s and early 80s with Alex Van Pelt.
No, oh, Jesus.
Remember him?
Oh,
yes.
Wow.
For Pitt.
Yeah.
How about this? I'm just going over my notes from the game. When McKee was in, 20-yard back shoulder throw on the money.
Yeah.
Money. When he came into the game.
Was Was this where we first
impeccable.
started to see him and like be like, ooh, this guy looks pretty good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
too bad.
Outside of like, just in preseason, like, oh, this guy looks like he's got good composure,
Mhm.
One thing that really jumped out to me, and I think it was in the next game. Well, I'll save it for them. But yeah, the composure was something that definitely jumped out in preseason. But then, oh, wow, he's doing it when it matters in a real game, even though it's a blowout. Still, you want to put that good film out there, and he put that good film out there.
He didn't look overwhelmed at all. He didn't look out of place. I mean, I think it's probably pretty easier for him when you can roll out that offensive line and, you have those weapons. And Saquon's running for 100,000 yards.
Yeah.
You feel pretty good as a quarterback.
Yeah, and he went to Stanford. He's no dummy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was throwing to A.J. Brown on that back shoulder throw.
Okay.
That made it 34-7. So that was pretty easy.
I mean,
And then
Devontae
the
had a huge
25-yard
game,
pass,
didn't he?
yeah.
Didn't Devontae Smith have a big game too? And that
yes,
one?
I want to say
120 or something, I want to say.
I think you're right.
Yeah, 6 catches, 120 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not a big deal.
With a bunch of backups. How about that?
And Jake Elliott went 2 for 2 for the field goals.
When we come back, we got one more game to get to from the regular season. That'll
It's
conclude.
a doozy, too.
It is a doozy.
Oh, man.
That'll conclude our season rewind for 2024, and then it'll be all about the postseason. So when we come back, we'll break down that one. This is Locked On Eagles, Eagles Squad podcast on the Locked On Eagles YouTube channel. After a couple of backups beat the brakes off the Cowboys, they went right back to work, and they were able to handle their business yet again, this time against the New York Giants. And just like it was against the Cowboys, you felt pretty damn good about the Eagles beating the Giants, even though they had a backup slinging in that game as well. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. They won 20-13 over the Giants. Whole slew of backups playing throughout that game. Nia Smith is able to go out there and get the first touchdown of the game on a 15-yard pass from Tanner McKee. Eagles go up 7-0 right out of the gate. Early in the second quarter, they go up 10-0 on a Jake Elliott field goal. And really, this was just all about getting some work in and seeing what you had in the reserve roles, Jason. And you think about Tanner McKee going out there. This was a play early in the game. Tanner McKee actually did something that you don't really see. You don't see this from Jalen Hurts. This isn't a dig of Jalen Hurts for anyone that's just desperate for a dig of Jalen Hurts. This is just something different. Tanner McKee completely turned his back to the play. You don't see that with Jalen Hurts. It was a play-action play, turned his back, under center, did a little triple sow cow, whatever that is.
Like a Nick
and
Foles.
then threw a ball. Yeah,
Foles used to do that. Yeah.
Like Nick Foles, and on the money down the field to Nia Smith. I believe it was that play that he did it on. And it was just that comfortability you have when you barely played to go out there and run an offense at the NFL level. That's what impressed me about Tanner McKee.
Yeah, and he threw the ball 41 times. I mean, he was chucking it. I remember this town freaking out over a preseason game that Sam Bradford played, and he had one of those where he hid the ball really well in the hip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
the wheel route to Sproles.
Sam, it's perfect fit with Chip Kelly, and people were going bananas over Sammy Sleeves. He stunk.
He did stink.
Absolutely
He stunk.
That was maybe the biggest overreaction to a preseason game I've ever seen in Philadelphia.
Was that against the Packers?
Yes.
I
It
think
was
it
at
was. Yeah,
it was. It was at Lambeau.
Yeah.
It was just insane. And we thought that was the savior, Sam Bradford. God, I mean.
Sammy Sleeves.
Sammy Sleeves. Anthony was going crazy. He thought
true.
this guy was the Messiah, for
yeah.
goodness sake. But Tanner McKee in the game, that's why he's earned the stature now that he is with the Eagles, because of that game. I mean, they just gave him the ball, let him chuck it around. Again, didn't look uncomfortable, and it was a hard game to watch at that point.
Oh, terrible.
I mean, it was.
The only reason we watched is we had to do the postcast.
Yeah.
I'm not watching that game.
Probably would have, yeah.
Seriously.
I probably would have watched some YouTube.
That's a preseason game in Week 18 is really what that was. I mean, there was really nothing on the line for anybody. You know, the whole thing about it was, Barkley's not going to play. He's going to finish 101 yards shy of Eric Dickerson's record. And then you're thinking about it. It's the prudent. It was the right decision, but it would have really been nice if he could have played and gotten it against his old team, be the all-time rusher. It would have been just something, extra on the seed. But they made the right call at the time because he was just too valuable to what you do to
And
risk
we saw
it
some other players
for a
go down
record.
that week, didn't we, Harry?
Yes,
Earlier
for Green Bay.
Yeah.
Green Bay lost their one wide receiver. Was it Watson? I think
Christian Watson.
Yeah, Watson got hurt, and I think Love got hurt in that game too, the quarterback.
Yes.
So yeah,
and it was meaningless.
Right. So, you had that. You had you mentioned Aeneas Smith getting a touchdown. Who was E.J. Jenkins? He's a tight end. He caught a touchdown too. I didn't even know he was on a team.
You mentioned it's like a preseason game or whatever. He looked really good in the preseason.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a tight end. I think they brought him back when Goddard went down, I want to say.
Okay.
I think they elevated him off the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. And he looked good in that game. And look, obviously anything's better than preseason, so let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But a game like this that means nothing, I want to see what a guy like Tanner McKee's made of. And something else, too, that I really enjoyed, and I think this was the game that Will Shipley broke off that big run and then fell. Like he couldn't get to the end zone.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember seeing Saquon Barkley on the sidelines just like laughing his ass off. Because those guys are having fun with it too.
Sure, sure.
And it's also where these guys put the good film on. As they always say, if you get an opportunity to step on that football field, don't blow it. Well, for a lot of these guys, if Saquon Barkley's having the year he's having, you're not going to see much of the football field. And I do remember the debate going into it about should Saquon play, should he not? And look, I understand. Like I would have loved to see him just go out there and rip one off in the first quarter, and there you go. You're packing in after that. The fact that they were playing the Giants is a cherry on top, whatever. But I think ultimately, when you end the season with a Super Bowl championship and a parade down Broad Street, any decision you made leading into it was the right decision. Yeah, it was the right decision. So,
but Brian Westbrook, B. West tweeted something during that game. I remember saying like Saquon would have had the record in the first quarter, something to that effect. Like, so he was watching and obviously rooting and hoping that maybe get in there and get the record. But it was the right decision. But 14-3 record, you finish up 8-1 at home and 12-1 over your last 13 games. Pretty freaking impressive.
And swelling with confidence.
Yeah.
Because you can win different ways, too. That was the other thing. They could win games in different ways. So perfectly set up for the playoffs. And we're going to get to that in the next episode because playoffs were a little bit fun.
I can't wait. I honestly, I can just tell you guys right now, at the start of that play, I kept on, because, I think we all run through the scenarios in our heads of how things are going to play out in the playoffs and all that stuff. And even when they get to the Super Bowl. And I kept coming back to this idea. I've never seen a more complete team than this Philadelphia Eagles team. I have never felt more even going into the Super Bowl against the Patriots in 2005. Big Donovan guy at the time. New T.O. was coming back. Great defense, but Bill Belichick still lurking. And that was their third Super Bowl in 4 years, if I'm not mistaken, that the Patriots won. So it wasn't like they were new to winning at that point. They just hadn't established that dynasty just yet. And that was the game that I think was the dynasty establishing game for them. Mm-hmm. And I just remember thinking, I'm confident, but the Philadelphia Eagles going into the playoffs, I felt 1,000 times more confident about their odds of winning a Super Bowl going into week one of the playoffs than I did in that Eagles 2005 run. I was brimming with confidence for this team because I had never seen a more complete team put on an Eagles jersey and go out there and play.
Well, 2017, too, we went into the playoffs. We didn't have a lot of confidence either because Wentz went down. And you're thinking, what can Foles do here? Mm-hmm. And so you didn't have that confidence because you're with your backup quarterback at that point. And he obviously shut everybody up, did Nick Foles. But you wondered about it then, too, when you ended up beating the Patriots. But, going into this playoffs, I mean, I think we all started to recognize that by that Pittsburgh win that, okay, this might be something special. And the way they started the year was a little herky-jerky, but the way they were beating teams after that and the way they were controlling games and riding the Saquon wave, you felt like it was something special. And thank God it came to fruition and did, because so many years in Philadelphia, as a fan base, we kind of sit here with great teams and we have the anvil over our head with the dwindling, string holding it up. We're waiting for the anvil to fall on us. In 2004, T.O. got hurt. Eventually got in the hyperbaric chamber, played in the Super Bowl. In 2017, you go and we lose our starting quarterback, right? Who was having an MVP season and Wentz. So you're always waiting for the anvil to fall. This one, yeah, Hurts got hurt towards the end of the year, but he was coming back. And you go into that playoffs and you just felt, yeah, this team, it is Super Bowl win or bust here. I don't care who you play.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we're going to start our playoff run version of the 2024 Season Rewind, the season that was, on Thursday. So look forward to breaking it down even further. Harry Mays, Jason Martinez, Marc Farzetta with you. Louis DiBiase will be back with us on Thursday. We'll continue this Eagles Squad podcast, and we'll be another couple days closer to the Eagles reporting to training camp. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Make sure you guys are following and liking and subscribing right here to Locked On Eagles YouTube channel, where Louis DiBiase has you covered each and every day for your Locked On Eagles daily content. And also make sure you guys throughout the season are staying right there with Jason Martinez and Harry Mays when it comes to your Locked On Eagles postcasts after each and every game in the upcoming year. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Be back with you guys Thursday. See you then.